It's always amazing to see how quickly your child grows, and I'm not just talking about their height. From those early babbles to full-on storytelling, getting to watch how their ideas, creativity, and confidence develop over the years is honestly pretty incredible. Sometimes they surprise you with what they come up with, and Lego bricks can be right there with them through all of those stages. It's not just a toy, it's a full creative building journey that keeps evolving as they do. Lego Sets Play starts as early as 1.5 with Lego Duplo, the bigger bricks designed for little hands that are just starting to explore and build. Then around age 4, kids transition to the smaller Lego bricks, and suddenly you're watching real structures take shape, real ideas form, and their imagination really take off. They begin with simple stacking, but over time they grow into full-on creators, building worlds, stories, and things you never would have expected. That's the kind of magic of Lego bricks. You're not buying a phase, you're starting a journey. Learn more and start building today with Lego bricks.
Welcome to the Going to Killing City podcast, a historical look at murder in Kansas City. Here are your hosts, Jamie Green and Alex Greenwood.
Hey, it's Jamie, and before we get started, I've got a quick recommendation. If you're into true crime but want something a little different, try True Crime Culinary. It's bite-sized episodes where real crimes meet food history. Easy listen, well-researched. You can find True Crime Culinary wherever you get your podcasts. Welcome back, everyone, to the Redacted City podcast this month. I'm not going to get yelled at. Not going to do it. Right. Happy New Year to everybody. Thank you so much for everybody being here. And once again, our special guest, not only is she our special guest on the podcast, she actually showed up at our live event. Jean Peters Baker, thank you so much for taking the time.
You bet. It was fun.
You had a good time. Did you get a chair massage at least? We were too busy.
I didn't get a chair massage.
Well, that's too bad.
That was a mistake on my part.
We
add it to my list of should have done that. I should have done that.
Well, we were too busy with our dog and pony show up front to get a massage. Although Greenwood got one before we even started. He was smart.
I was incredibly relaxed the whole time.
Yeah. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. And did you learn anything about those two crazy cases that we talked about?
I did. I wasn't really familiar with either one of those.
They're nuts. Cool. That's very cool. Well, we're just going to delve in. Happy New Year to everybody. And real quick, this month's sponsor is our good friend from West Bottoms Whiskey, who want you to know all about their limited release Maple Cask finished rye whiskey. They are pairing rye with maple syrup. A company called Runamuck maple syrup producer in Vermont with their whiskey, 95% rye grain. Fall Sipper is best described as breakfast in a glass, which is dangerous. But we do want to thank them. They are always great. Small operation. They do a great job. So this month's sponsor is our good friends at West Bottoms Whiskey. And also, we're going to let Alex. So the hint to Alex was, of course, railroaded.
Yes.
So, Alex, you once again outdid yourself. Let's talk about your drink.
Well, I'll make it quick. But, when I think of being railroaded, I think of a lot of things. But I thought, let's just go and be more literal. And I came up with the Switchman, is what I call it. The Switchman. It's basically, I thought the double entendre would be the Switchman. It's the moment you realize the outcome was decided before you ever stepped onto the platform. It's a lot like getting married. So here's what you got. We've got the aforementioned 2 ounces of West Bottoms whiskey rye. This rye, by the way, chef's kiss, fantastic. Got to get it. Go see Alex and the gang down at West Bottoms. Jamie, we got to, of course, Gene, next time you're in town, we got to get back down to West Bottoms. Anyway, all right.
Yes.
Take those.
I'll go.
Yeah, good. All right, good. It's a date. 2 ounce West Bottoms whiskey rye, 1/2 ounce Amaro. That can be Nonino or Montenegro, whichever you prefer. If you don't have a preference, like Jamie, just flip a coin. Then about 1/4 ounce of Demerara syrup. And by the way, you can make that yourself, but basically, that sugar in the raw stuff, if you were to kind of use that to make a simple syrup at home on your stovetop. That's basically a poor man's dim Amaro, but you can buy it just about anywhere, but it's good stuff. So about a quarter ounce of that, 2 dashes of black walnut bitters, or something from our friends at Angostura. If you've seen Angostura, I'm showing this on the video here because the thing that's kind of clever or fun, it's really not even clever. It's just that the label doesn't fit. And they did a whole run of these and people remembered that, so they've never changed it. So put that on there. And then optional, maybe you could rinse the glass with a little absinthe or pastis. It's okay. But one thing is optional, but I think you ought to try anyway, is a little Islay scotch or whatever your scotch you like as a float. Now, a float is real simple. We'll explain that. So the method is very simple. If you're using the absinthe or the pastis, rinse a chilled rocks glass and discard the excess. Stir in the rye, the Amaro, the syrup, and the bitters of your choice over ice until well chilled. Strain that over a large clear ice cube in the prepared glass, and then float a small bar spoon of the scotch on top. That's the float. You just take a little bar spoon, put a little bit on top, a little bit. And if you're using the garnish, you could express an orange peel. You could do what I've got here tonight. Where's my camera? There it is. That's got one of these kind of, by the way, this wedge of orange, dude, guess where I bought that?
I don't know.
I bought a whole jar at West Bottoms Whiskey of these things.
Wow.
And they are tremendous. They dry them out for you and they're beautiful and they're still flexible and tasty. And they're pretty too. It's just that little bit of oomph that sets you apart. So try that. Or you can do this. By the way, I'm just going to show you this. This is the candied orange twist, the cocktail garnish that I use occasionally too. It's out of a jar, but don't tell anybody. Just pretend like you slaved away and made it yourself. Okay. So have a couple of these and you stir it all together. Have a couple of these things and you won't be able to stay on track.
Boom. All right. Once again, he doesn't kick my butt in the stories, Gene, but he always kicks my butt in the cocktails. That's just how it rolls.
Okay, let's
breakfast in glass. That's what I call it.
I'm not sure I fully get my butt kicked by you on every story, JB, but your point is well made. I appreciate the compliment. Thank you.
Yeah. Check the downloads. Anyway.
Well, I have it on good authority. You boosted a couple. So go.
Well, Gene, this is really your story, but why don't I just kind of set the scene, the beginning of this, and I'm going to let you go. So on Tuesday, April 25th, 1978, 4 men barged into a home at 6934 South Benton Boulevard here in Kansas City. And what would start out as a robbery, which soon turned deadly. 3 individuals, Larry Ingram, who was 21, John Wilker, who was 20, and Sherry Black, who was only 22. They were all killed instantly. So 3 people were murdered that day, sadly. A 4th victim, a woman named Cynthia Douglas, would pretend to be dead after being shot as well, but she was not killed. Now, once these 4 men left, she went to her neighbors, and the neighbors called police. 2 of the perpetrators were instantly identified, and we're gonna, Gene, I'm gonna let you talk about that, who these people were. They were arrested and would plead guilty. And the 3rd man has never officially been identified. But the 4th man, and why we are here today, was a gentleman named Kevin Strickland. And he would spend 44 years of his life in prison for a crime that he did not commit. Tell us a little bit about this case and why it's so important that we talk about it today.
Yeah, look, in prep for this, I thought, boy, I better go back through these binders, see what I have forgotten. I forgot really how much I was caught off guard of the politics of this. So there's a whole layer of really ugly politics that crept into this and really tried to direct the outcome in my not at all humble opinion. My righteous opinion was flat wrong. So the right thing happened, but it was a really epic battle to get this guy out of custody. So the guy we're talking about is Kevin Strickland. I saw him last time I was in KC, and just a couple of weeks ago, told him, hey, I'm going to be doing this podcast about your case. And you'd have to really know Kevin to really appreciate him. He is the most pessimistic optimist I will ever meet. I'm sure he is both even in the same sentence. So he's really a joy to know. Um, so I just before we get into the horrible facts of this case, I do think it's important to, bring light to who he is as a person. Um, he is uh, not like the evidence just went a little soured and this evidence got muddy and confusing. Kevin did not do this crime. He wasn't part of the planning of it. He wasn't on the periphery of this crime. He didn't do this. He wasn't part of the gang. He wasn't part of the group uh, that literally planned this and carried out this awful murder. But he paid a tremendous price for it with a wrongful conviction where he got sentenced to a hard 50. And a hard 50 was only on the books for about a little less than a decade, I think, in the state of Missouri. So he was one of the few that actually, was stuck doing almost, day for day the 50 years.
It was 44 years, right?
It
That he
was.
served. Yeah.
That's right.
It's insane to think about.
Yeah, I think people often report it out as 43, but I think that fails to take into account he did about 1 year in the county jail before he went on to the Missouri Department of Corrections.
I mean, I don't
It's
even know what I was
crazy.
doing 44 years. I mean, that's so, I mean, Jimmy Carter was president. That's how long ago that was. That's how long of
Yes.
his life this was. And I did read
So,
your blog post about this world that he finally comes out to.
yeah.
It's not a world he even knew anymore. But I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah. I do still have his first voicemail message to me, after he got out of custody and he's free. I really didn't have a chance to talk to him before the case actually went to, we call it a trial hearing. It went to a hearing because the attorney generals were such, how do I describe the attorney generals? I've described it in the past as it was prosecutorial malpractice, what they did. And it is, those are big words, but I still stand by those years later. The duty and oath a prosecutor takes is completely opposite of what was done by those prosecutors in this case. So they should, that's people make mistakes. I've made them. I'm sure I made them as a prosecutor. The goal is that you are willing to look at mistakes you made and evaluate your own conduct, see what you could have done different, what do you learn from it, so that we don't end up with another Kevin Strickland.
So
So
I
I
think
hope those prosecutors are doing the same.
right, and that individual, if I'm incorrect, please correct me, but is now a United States senator, correct?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Wow.
we fail up. Sometimes people fail up. So
Yeah.
that happens too. That happens too.
So,
Yeah.
so you want to talk about the case itself, and later, or do we just want to talk about when you first became aware of Kevin, and then go that way? It's totally your call, but whichever you feel is the better way to tell the story.
Yeah. Well, I think I had this fellow working with me at the time, Dan Nelson, who's a great lawyer, and he's the one that brought this case to me. He said, "Hey, I think we may have an innocent guy here." Um, and I said, "Oh, damn. Okay, well let's get on that. Let's get right on that." And he really started working backwards on this. He really did a phenomenal job of kind of setting up the posture of this case. He went multiple places, not knowing this was going to become a really political event, but um, he kind of inoculated a lot of parties along the way because I think just in his due diligence of, let's make sure we got this right. We went multiple places to ask people to look at the evidence. We went to the mayor's office and got a statement from the mayor. We went to, who was a lawyer at the time, the head of the police board, president, I guess, of police board, Kansas City, Missouri Police Board, and he wrote a strong statement that the police would not oppose this. So we went U.S. Attorney's Office. We just went multiple places to sort of, and Dan did all that work. I just, was waiting for the final product here. And then, what we learned is shocking to me, that not everybody would just embrace the fact that he was innocent, because all the evidence just turned against his conviction. Whatever little scraps were there at conviction, which I think even at the time that he is tried, he had two trials. First trial is a hung jury, second trial is a conviction. But I think even back then, this was described as very, very thin, very, very marginal evidence.
So the first
No
trial,
doubt that's true.
my understanding from my reading of it is it was all white but one person, one African American, and the rest were all white. And that the one African American was the holdout that caused it to be.
That's right.
Right. And do you know, because, I read through the cases and stuff, and I mean, if this is true, it's obviously infuriating that the prosecutor went up and said, I won't make this mistake a second time, meaning he's not going to place an African American on the second jury. And I am not an attorney. I know we talked offline. My wife is, but I'm not. But in seating the second jury, he used whatever whatever he legally could do to make sure there was not a single African American on it. Is that all true?
That's what we believe to be true. Is it true that the first jury had a singular Black female that was the lone holdout to convict him? That's absolutely true. Was the second jury all white, and did the prosecutor use all their peremptory strikes to make sure it was a white jury, all white jury? Yes, we know that's true. The statement is what Kevin Strickland remembers. He remembers seated at counsel table after the first jury came back with that one lone juror holding out, and the young prosecutor leaning across the table making that statement to him and his trial team that this would not happen a second time. So yes, that's what we believe happened.
And I mean, that's so egregious on so many levels. And I think eventually this all went to not this case, but a case similar to the Supreme Court that finally said you can't do that. And it became right. But it was too late for Kevin. It didn't help Kevin out.
Too late for Kevin. So yeah, this was Batson. Batson put an end to that practice. There's still ways around it, of course, but Batson largely ended that practice.
So how
constitutionally?
We all are Kansas Citians, or former, or halftime Kansas City, whatever we are. How in the world were all the people being accused of murder are African American? All the victims of the murder are African American. How in the world can we have an all-white jury? I mean, explain that to me like I'm 5 years old. I mean, it is supposed to be a jury of your peers.
Yeah. So what year is it? Is it the year 1978 or is it 2025? Because I think, I think even during the 90s, we had a hard time, we being prosecutors had a hard time really grappling with Batson and how you went about it, because, this is going to offend a lot of prosecutors, but historically, the rule was you get African Americans off your jury because they won't convict. The risk is that they won't convict. I personally have not found that to be true. That is just absolutely not true. But, we come up with all kinds of stupid ideas about race. So this is just one more. But I have found African Americans, almost every jury I've ever had, and I've had quite a few jury trials, probably about 70, 75 jury trials, African Americans convict. They just do. So, I don't know what to say about that. It's just a thread of racism that runs through the criminal justice system. And the Supreme Court recognized that as something that we needed to reform in the system. And that's when the Batson case came down. And over time. I think prosecutors have gotten much better at understanding that they have to be multifaceted. That you really do want a jury of people's peers because you want the conviction, but you also want a conviction that the community supports and that the community will also defend. And the way to do that, of course, is to do it in an open courtroom using rules of evidence and a community that looks like your actual community is deciding a case.
It's always amazing to see how quickly your child grows, and I'm not just talking about their height. From those early babbles to full-on storytelling, getting to watch how their ideas, creativity, and confidence develop over the years is honestly pretty incredible. Sometimes they surprise you with what they come up with, and Lego bricks can be right there with them through all of those stages. It's not just a toy, it's a full creative building journey that keeps evolving as they do. Lego Sets Play starts as early as 1.5 with Lego Duplo, the bigger bricks designed for little hands that are just starting to explore and build. Then around age 4, kids transition to the smaller Lego bricks, and suddenly you're watching real structures take shape, real ideas form, and their imagination really take off. They begin with simple stacking, but over time they grow into full-on creators, building worlds, stories, and things you never would have expected. That's the kind of magic of Lego bricks. You're not buying a phase, you're starting a journey. Learn more and start building today with Lego bricks.
Well, and just if I could dip in here as the guy who didn't know what we were going to talk about tonight, just any listeners who are going, what are we talking about here?
Right.
This was Kevin Bernard Strickland, and he was wrongfully convicted by an all-white jury in 1979 of killing 3 people in Kansas City. No physical evidence linked to him at the scene of the crime, and the only alleged witness later recanted her testimony that Strickland was involved, stating that she was coerced by the police. Well, there you go. So he was given that life sentence that was mentioned. I just wanted to give a little context for folks who are like, wait, what are we talking about here? And it took me a minute. I went, okay, I get it now, but I'm still kind of, so now I see why railroaded comes into play here. Okay, very good.
Well, let me give a little bit more context for our current stuff then. Since we just jumped in and I lived it with Kevin, and I shouldn't say that. Let me back up. I did not live this with Kevin. I was 9 years old when he went to prison. I went about doing my life, and I only met him, in 2021. So from 2021 onward, I feel like, I was in this with him, but just since then, he had a lot of life before that.
Yeah.
So it's April 25th, 1978. There are 3 people who are inside a home, 4 people inside a home. Sherry Black, she's age 22. John Walker is age 20, and Larry Ingram, age 21. And then there's Cynthia Douglas, who becomes our sort of star witness for the prosecution here. The 4 of them are inside this home when 4 men come into the home, one of them wielding a shotgun, 2 of them have their heads totally covered with some kind of bag over their head. So forced entry, they tie everybody up, and then they shoot and kill them. Everyone is shot, but Cynthia Douglas, being tied to her best friend, Sherry Black, Cynthia gets shot in the leg and pretends she's dead as well, pretends, feigns death. That's what we believe kept her alive, because they certainly wanted no witnesses. She is able to untie herself from her friend Sherry after the gunmen all leave, and then she climbs out the front door, and some neighbors then end up giving her help. But I want to kind of set the stage for Cynthia, since she has become such an important witness. She is sort of the evidence, in this case for the prosecution. She has her best friend's brain matter in her hair and on her face, on her clothing, blood from her friend. She's also shot and bleeding. Her boyfriend, Larry Ingram, has been tied up, bound in another room and shot at point blank range. This was incredibly traumatic for her. And At the scene, she does end up giving a name Nardi, but it doesn't come real quick like that. Nardi is the nickname for Kevin Strickland, but it only comes after she's had a phone call with her sister's boyfriend, who lives real close, and he comes running to the scene as well and meets her at the hospital. He helps plant that name, and I don't think he has any, real ill intent in doing so. She's able to identify two of the individuals that did this, and this sister's boyfriend ends up saying, "Wait a minute, I saw Kevin Strickland with them recently," and that's what it ended up being. Now I end up looking at who we believe the real killer is, because Cynthia Douglas does identify Kevin Strickland as the man wielding the shotgun. This is important because, his hands, ungloved hands, are on the gun, on the shotgun, wielding it around, killing people. We run prints off that shotgun many, many years later, and they exclude Kevin Strickland. So they are absolutely not Kevin Strickland prints on the shotgun. We know that. We also there was about 137 other prints inside the home that we believe, that surviving victim Cynthia thought they touched, or they were in this room. And Kevin Strickland, not only just you couldn't conclude one way or the other whether it was him, that wasn't the case. He was absolutely excluded from every single one of those. So, that's really damaging evidence for a prosecutor, I think at the time they did not know all that, but now we do, because I made sure that whatever evidence there was, let's take a look at it. And the prints on the shotgun to me were really super important, because there's no question Cynthia Douglas originally believed Kevin Strickland was the one wielding the shotgun. Now, one more point on that I want to make. Who we believe to be the actual shooter, and I won't name him because he deserves that, but I won't name him because I'll try hard, to remember not to name him. I did knock on his door, letting him know he got a real freebie here. But this individual, it's not a doppelganger, but side by side, his profile pic, next to Kevin's, they were close. They looked very similar. They had a similar look, similar height, similar age, similar skin tone. They were, it's certainly possible you could make that mistake when you are in a lot of trauma, and you are going to the police department after you've been to the hospital for to treat your gunshot wound, but you still have your best friend's blood matter on you. She's still in a whole lot of trauma. So I just think we've learned a lot about eyewitness testimony since 1978. We don't make these kinds of errors. I hope other prosecutors don't make these kind of errors anymore. But you really got to step back and really take a look at a single eyewitness testimony who's in that level of trauma, and making a key identification when there's absolutely no other evidence, physical or otherwise, that leads to Kevin Strickland.
So, a couple of things. So, yeah, eyewitness testimony. I know you were in the courtroom for years. I've always heard that it's not that reliable for a lot of the reasons that you just pointed out. Most likely this woman had PTSD from this incident. Certainly enormous trauma. Like you said, not only was she shot herself, but to have her best friend and other people murdered right in front of her.
Her boyfriend.
Right. So that's part of it. So I'm curious about a case that, to the outsider, to a layperson like myself and Alex, that seems so flimsy and so bad. Is it because Kevin didn't get a robust defense? Because I'm guessing Kevin didn't have any money to pay for a top flight lawyer. race is, I'm just going to say it, race always comes into play in these types of things. Why do you think they were able to convict Kevin on evidence to myself, and I know you and everybody, the Innocent Project folks that looked at this, how were they able to get a conviction?
It's always amazing to see how quickly your child grows, and I'm not just talking about their height. From those early babbles to full-on storytelling, getting to watch how their ideas, creativity, and confidence develop over the years is honestly pretty incredible. Sometimes they surprise you with what they come up with, and Lego bricks can be right there with them through all of those stages. It's not just a toy, it's a full creative building journey that keeps evolving as they do. Lego Sets Play starts as early as 1.5 with Lego Duplo, the bigger bricks designed for little hands that are just starting to explore and build. Then around age 4, kids transition to the smaller Lego bricks, and suddenly you're watching real structures take shape, real ideas form, and their imagination really take off. They begin with simple stacking, but over time they grow into full-on creators, building worlds, stories, and things you never would have expected. That's the kind of magic of Lego bricks. You're not buying a phase, you're starting a journey. Learn more and start building today with Lego bricks.
Oh, that's a hard question to answer when you're not literally in the courtroom watching the evidence and the flow of the evidence and how people testify. So I, who really went back and looked at every little shred of everything I could find, I had a hard time kind of piecing that together as well. I did think Kevin's lawyers were pretty good. They did raise issues, and one of those I want to talk about, there's a black hair issue here that I want to make sure we don't miss, because it's pretty important. But in Kevin's case, there was an eyewitness that came forward and did say it's him. Now, when I read her testimony, I'm just reading it on a page. It's not recorded, so I can't see it any other way. Just reading it, it seemed weird. She seemed a little bit unsure of herself. There was definitely not a rhythm going between the prosecutor and his star witness, Cynthia Douglas. So I can't imagine that she was very compelling at trial from just reading her transcript, because I've put eyewitness testimony on the stand a bunch. And if I were stuck with that level of testimony as a prosecutor, I would have been thinking, dang, we're in trouble. I'm not sure we can win this one. We can't count on winning this one. So I guess I just have to say maybe in 1978, it was a little easier maybe to get a conviction through than it would have been during my era of, late 90s through this past year. That's not good enough anymore for jurors. And right on, it shouldn't be. The burden is high for prosecutors, and it should be high. We don't want to lower it. We just want it to be fair. And I think Kevin's trial team, they really did try to exploit these holes. So I don't know how to explain it. A different jury could have acquitted, for sure.
Gene, let me ask you, we're talking about two wholly different societal and political environments. Today, social media, people are much more aware. Some might call the word woke, don't know, it doesn't matter. But back then, getting the attention, I think about the brilliant movie director, Billy Friedkin, who did The French Connection. His first thing that got him noticed that led to his career was a documentary about a guy, a situation where he was wrongfully accused. He did this whole documentary and helped get the guy out, although it did turn out the guy probably ultimately did do it. But
that happens sometimes, yeah.
Right, but that was like back in the early 70s. So it would be rare, is my point, to get enough public attention to put pressure on government officials to relook at a case, right?
Yeah.
Would you say that the overall societal temperature that we live in now, you just, like you've said it, you've alluded to it a couple of times already. You can't. It's apples and oranges between 1978 and 2025. It's just
Right.
no comparison, right? Right. Okay.
So, Alex, one way I'd like to, kind of bring this home is to bring, like when I tried to bring my judge into the realm of 1978 and, myself back into the realm of 1978, I went back and I looked at whether or not, what kind of phones were we using then? And we did not yet have, in that part of 1978, we did not have a cordless telephone.
Wow.
We still had to have one of those really long cords, that it seemed like if you were cool, you had like the 6 foot of cord and you could walk maybe, a couple of feet while talking to somebody. That's where we were in April 1978 when this really horrible crime occurred. That's where we were. And, now we use technology that, it'll probably be obsolete, next year. There'll probably be something completely different.
Right.
But we're just not in the same realm.
So you had to kind of create a time machine, not a literal one, obviously, because if you have a literal one, could I borrow it? But you had to create a figurative time machine so that people, because that's the thing about storytelling. That's the thing about it, making any kind of an argument correct, is if you can't get people, well, here I go, Mr. Naive. If you can't get people to share the same set of facts, first of all, that's a problem. But if you could at least get enough empathy or enough critical thinking going on where they're like, you're right,
Yes.
yeah, I don't think, it just seems to me the level of creativity involved in your job is something I think people don't really understand fully. I think there's an understanding based on a lot of television, what they think.
True. There's a lot of crime shows on TV now. Yeah.
Yeah. I even heard President Trump called his lawyers in. It was reporting done by, I think, forgive me, Michael Wolff, but he said that he looked at them all and said, "Have you ever heard of someone named Perry Mason?" He apparently did. And they literally looked at him like, but he had this magical idea that attorneys should go in and you should never put a wrong word in the wrong place, not a bad foot forward. Nobody stumbles, nobody stammers, nobody is and the public. So I'm wondering, I guess, sorry, that's a long way around to get to, Gene, is just to say, you got an uphill battle against people who really think they understand the legal system. And that includes our elected officials, right? I know for a fact that, and I don't want to get too far ahead, but you appealed to certain government officials later who just didn't think there was nothing there.
Yeah. Look, when I first looked at this case, I looked at it as a prosecutor. I didn't know Kevin Strickland. I didn't know any of the parties here. I didn't even know Kevin's lawyer, who asked my office to take a look at it. Bob Hoffman, he's a good guy. I didn't know him. I literally had no, stake in it other than just looking at the evidence. And really, truly, when I looked at the evidence, I just gasped. I was like, oh God, this is really, really bad. And I knew one of the prosecutors on Kevin's case. And what I thought to myself, and I still think today, is if he were living, he died in 2019. If he were living, he would have stood with me at a podium trying to free Kevin. I totally believe that. He would not have, he wouldn't have been one of those that would have fought to keep him in. Because if you think like a prosecutor, then you're just looking at actual evidence, like a practitioner would of their craft. You bring in politicians like a governor who has wants to, like I was that woke prosecutor, I think is the only way he's ever referred to me. The attorney general, also referred to me in some pretty negative ways because it for them politically, that was good posture for them, to be opposite me. because I was viewed as a progressive or a liberal. And so they were looking at it purely through political eyes and what they could advance, not as a practitioner. And it that did surprise me. It did surprise me, but I shifted a lot too after the year 2020, and saw the way things were going, and the people that I think abandoned sort of the rule of law for political purposes was pretty much on the rise at that point in time. So they weren't in a small club, they were in a big club of people. So,
Well, part of the thing too that and you alluded to, things have changed so much since 1978. And I
yes.
would say absolutely on that end, but I would also argue that on the political side, things have gotten much worse than 1978. We were all old enough now that we remember when Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan could get into the White House and have a nice conversation and not agree with each other's politics, but felt each other individual was a
Have a
good
drink?
man trying to do his best in a situation. And it has become such a horrible space where you can't have any ability to give the other side quarter, especially on the one side at all. That I think, when you said you gasped when you looked at the case, when all this came out, Gene, and I mean, we're talking the Attorney General. He's also, bound by the law and has sworn
He
an
is
oath.
the same one I am.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, the same one.
And it's not even like I don't believe this case kind of thing. Like you said, that like they're doing ad hominem attacks against you. They're making this as awful as possible. So I feel like that's one of the part of this case too that's really infuriating, because you can disagree with somebody politically,
Right.
but when
Right.
you're
Sure.
smacked in the face with overwhelming evidence, and I hope this isn't a spoiler. The two guys that were convicted that actually did it, they pled out. They only served
Correct.
10 years.
That's
So
right. They
Kevin
did.
Strickland spent 34 more years in prison than the two guys who actually did it, just
Pled
because,
guilty and said they did it.
right. And also said that he
Yeah.
didn't do it and wasn't there.
That's right. They both have maintained that. Vincent Bell maintained that during his guilty plea. He said this when the judge asked him, "Hey, Bell, why are you pleading guilty today?" Is one of the many questions a judge will ask. And he said, "Because y'all convicted a man who wasn't even there." So, he was
Wow.
worried.
Wow.
Now, here's the key thing. Cynthia Douglas was sitting in the back of that courtroom listening to Vincent Bell plead guilty. She was hearing that whole dialogue. And that's when she realized, oh my God, I made a terrible mistake. She knew then. So the word is she tried to tell that same prosecutor who leaned across the table and said, "I won't let this happen again." She tried to tell him, that day in the courtroom, "Oh my God, I think I made a terrible mistake." No one would listen to her. That's the testimony that we had, is that she really tried to, tell the world she made a mistake. And she held on to that until the date of her death, that she made a terrible mistake.
Yeah, and then I saw Alex's expression. So I guess if I'm then Governor Parsons, or if I'm then the Attorney General, and I see this case, and I still think he's guilty, I still think he did it. My take would be on, well, the man's been in prison for over 40 years. The other two
Yeah.
guys that were convicted only did 10.
Right.
Let him go,
Yeah,
right?
close enough. We got him.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
I
we
don't know
got our
what the average
justice.
sentence is for murder in the state of Missouri, but I'm guessing it's not 44 years, right?
No, no. He was under that hard 50, which is, again, that was a very short period of time a hard was even available. So let me try to do what I just, said that the other side wouldn't do for me. Let me try and give the Attorney General a little bit of why you might have an issue with the evidence here. Cynthia Douglas is dead. There's no opportunity for me to cross-examine her and ask her, how did you make this big of a mistake? because I was weighted by that for a little while, but you know how I corrected that, or how I was able to sort of rectify my thoughts around, can I trust the email that Cynthia Douglas sent to the Innocence Project before she died, and the number of people that she told. I called her daughter to the witness stand and I said, "Did your mom talk to you about this? What did she tell you?" And of course, she said it weighted on her soul that she made a mistake. She called Kevin Strickland in prison and told him, "I'm so sorry, I made this mistake." She told her mother. I called her mother as a witness. Her husband, at the time, who really was kind of this, kind of turd of a human being, but we called him in to testify, and he testified about this, and to speak to the skill of the Attorney General's office. I had ended up convicting her husband of some terrible crimes. He had been doing a lot of time in prison for that. She made this guy seem sympathetic. The way the Attorney General came after him, it was kind of nails on a chalkboard. So there wasn't a lot of skill exhibited by the other side, but I just want to say that in their behalf, maybe they feared there wasn't enough evidence to support Cynthia Douglas's recantation. But I didn't stop there with the mom, the daughter, and the ex-husband. I called Eric Wesson, who was a high school friend of hers, and she told him that story. She told a coworker that she worked at family court and was a very reputable person. I called her in to testify about that. There were many witnesses to be able, for the court to consider the weight to give Cynthia Douglas recantation. And then as a prosecutor, you just have to go back and look at the evidence. How could she have made the mistake? And you can see it. You can literally see it in the evidence. There is a way to, it didn't have to be a mistake that she made that was willful, or where she had malice. It was just a mistake. It was a mistake.
Which happens all the time in
identity.
trauma. People are in a trauma situation and they aren't thinking clearly for obvious reasons. Like, this is not out of the ordinary.
No, she wasn't trying to obfuscate anything. She saw it as she saw it. That thing you hear about, you see red, like when you're angry, that kind of thing. Well, it's a biological response. You tend to narrow, and a lot of people aren't very cool about that later when they hear about it. Gene, I just need a little more context on, basically, from where you sat as prosecutor. How many of these did you get in your term? You served for quite a bit. Did you get a lot of people going to you, "Hey, knock, 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 I need you to look at this again"?
I got a lot of people coming to me to ask me to look, and it was heartbreaking, because normally it was family members that would come forward. They would have a fraction of the evidence. We'd back and pull the case and start looking at the evidence, and then I'd have to meet with them again to tell them, "Look, I think your family member left out some key pieces of evidence." And like in one particular young man's case, he caught me on the elevator in the courthouse and begged me to look at his dad's case, and I had to call. I pulled it, I went through it, met with him later, and I'm like, "I'm so sorry, young man, but he is guilty." So he's guilty of it.
Gene, can I just tell you, if I may, a few years ago, I was in Nebraska working at a small higher ed institution, and I got a call, long story short, from an aunt whose son was being hauled in front of a judge for something. And, "Would you please just come down?" This was after I'd run for office. Unlike you, I did not get to the legislature. But anyway, I'd run for Oklahoma legislature.
Congratulations.
So yeah, right. In
So,
retrospect. But my point being, I had a little standing left in Oklahoma City, and it was before the judge. "Could you please come tell the judge that I'm not going to say who it is, but it's a extended family member, and you've known him, and just be a character witness." So I get there, I go to the courtroom, and I get up and make a statement for him. And then I proceed to hear all this other stuff from the judge, no less, of all the things he had done that I had no idea about.
Yeah.
And I'm cringing, Gene, and I'm blushing.
Yeah.
And I know the judge saw me and he said, Mr. Green, would you please come back up? And I said, okay. I thought, am I in trouble? Does he think I lied? And he said, tell me who you are. I told him who I was. He said, where do you live? And I told him, he said, how many hours to drive here? I said, about 8. He said, and you came here because? I said, because he's my relation and he needed help. And he says, were you aware of all this other stuff? I said, nope. And he said, if you had been aware, I said, well, it's obvious I wouldn't be here. I felt duped and I felt sad and embarrassed, but I also could see the desperation on the part of my extended family, right? Who were just like, please. And I get it, but he messed up. We'll leave it there. But I guess I wanted to say to you, I have empathy for these family members who get taken for a ride, and then I have another family member. You don't think I'm from a bunch of hoodlums, but I have another family member who got in trouble for something really bad, and he lied to my face about it, and he lied to everybody about it until it's just funny that people don't know you can look up court records and just see even when a deal's been made and all that kind of stuff. You can kind of figure it out. But people don't want to do that because they love their family member.
Of course. And I've had, as an assistant prosecutor, would have character witnesses at sentencing, come forward. And I hated doing it. Like, understand this, as a prosecutor, I hated doing this.
But, you took no joy in this, right?
But I would ask those witnesses, I'd say, do you know what your friend was charged with? No. So if I told you he was charged with molesting 2, not 1, but 2 little boys, would that make a difference to you? Yeah. If I told you the boys were 5 and 6, would that make a difference to you? Oh my God. Yeah. And you just have to keep telling them additional facts. And it wasn't fun to do that to people, but it, they're coming in to testify that he's a really good guy, when I think what they're saying is he was so good in the choir, like in the church choir, he was awesome. And I'm like, I don't dispute that.
Right. Yeah. I think I may have alluded to this last time we spoke, but my hat's off to you. What a tough job. What a really tough job. Great job,
though. Great job. We got to free Kevin. Right?
True.
So can we talk
let me give this
that?
a little bit.
Yeah, talk about that.
I will say,
please.
I thought it was important to, when I first learned of Kevin's innocence, and I become more and more assured of it as we go, because we're just trying to gather more and more facts. And there just wasn't a fact that ever led us to a different outcome, right. It just didn't. So, we were during the legislative session. We're now in the last week of the legislative session, and the piece of legislation I need to pass to free Kevin is stalled. It's dead. Yeah, that happens. And so, maybe this might be the first time I'm confessing this, but it seemed obvious to the world that's what I was doing. I called a press conference on a Monday morning, invited, Kevin's lawyers, myself, and we did a little press conference on, we believe he's innocent, and I want to try and free him. But this law, sure could use that law. Legislators, if you're listening, they passed it.
Wow.
They passed it. That later that week, it got they resurrected and they passed it. And that's how I was able to free Kevin. So I will say, a lot of prosecutors say, oh, well, I'm no politician, I'm just a prosecutor. I'm like, oh, well, okay. Kevin'd still be rotting in a jail cell if I hadn't been a little bit of a politician, to be able to get that done.
Right.
However you do it.
Wow. and yeah, that's the thing. I'm sorry, just real quick, Jamie, is and especially Jackson County, it's such a high profile position, right? And if you don't have a little politician in you, you probably are not going to be as successful as you were. Anyway, sorry, Jamie, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to mention, because as you said, I think what everybody, and the law only works if we as citizens believe in it and believe that it's fair and believe that it's just, right? That's how it works. So, but as you alluded to, There is an individual that you're not naming, and we don't have to name either, who literally got away with murder
I
because of
knocked
this.
on his door, man. I knocked on that brother's door. I
And
was
how
like,
did he react?
he didn't answer the door.
Okay.
So I left my business card.
But I mean, that's damning too, because if we're trying to do the right thing, I mean, these people who sat up and fought you tooth and nail, part and parcel through the whole process, under the guise that we have to, it's
Oh,
just
and Jamie never called the victims' families, never called them. They trotted out the word, we're victims, we're fighting for the victims here. They never met with not one of those four families. They didn't meet with any of them. I met with all of them.
Wow.
I told them what I was doing and why. They agreed with me. They said, God, if we got the wrong person, please go free him. So I want to say that because that used to irk the shit out of me, that I went out to meet with them in their homes, in their living rooms, and the governor and the AG are saying this BS that they're fighting for the victims. They didn't even know their names.
right.
They didn't even know who they were.
I mean, I know hypocrisy has kind of died in this culture, which is sad to me.
So a shame. Shame's gone.
Shame's way gone. But to me, that I couldn't, I could not do that. I could not live with myself knowing that someone not only did one poor man spend over 4 decades in prison for something he didn't do, but the person who should have been in jail went scot-free. I mean, anyway, so that's
and
really,
that should bother all of us.
Right.
And, I mean, and I want to give some credit to the Attorney General's office. I do think that bothers them. I just don't understand why the flip doesn't bother them, like the wrong person's in, and why do you want the wrong person to stay in? I don't quite know how to square that in my prosecutor brain. It doesn't. I just see it different, I guess. I don't understand that.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but my reading of this case was, since he was not exonerated by DNA evidence, that he cannot get any money from the state of Missouri. Any of the money that he has received is through like a GoFundMe site.
Holy cow.
That's right. That is exactly right.
How do we fix that?
I think there is a bill that went through. I quit following it. I think because maybe last legislative session, there was a bill that maybe went through to pay them something. Now, I don't know, because I honestly, I didn't follow it. So I'm not sure that Missouri has corrected that mistake. And if it's enough money, because you do owe someone millions of dollars, bluntly, when you've had to serve 44 years.
I think $1 million per year would do just fine, don't you? $1 million per year. I'm going to talk to my state rep, Ashley Oné. I'm calling her. She's a minority leader, I believe. I'm going to talk to Ashley about this. This is
all right.
It's always amazing to see how quickly your child grows, and I'm not just talking about their height. From those early babbles to full-on storytelling, getting to watch how their ideas, creativity, and confidence develop over the years is honestly pretty incredible. Sometimes they surprise you with what they come up with, and Lego bricks can be right there with them through all of those stages. It's not just a toy, it's a full creative building journey that keeps evolving as they do. Lego Sets Play starts as early as 1.5 with Lego Duplo, the bigger bricks designed for little hands that are just starting to explore and build. Then around age 4, kids transition to the smaller Lego bricks, and suddenly you're watching real structures take shape, real ideas form, and their imagination really take off. They begin with simple stacking, but over time they grow into full-on creators, building worlds, stories, and things you never would have expected. That's the kind of magic of Lego bricks. You're not buying a phase, you're starting a journey. Learn more and start building today with Lego bricks.
seriously.
Okay, I said something about hair.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I want to bring up the hair.
Yes.
Because for me, the fact that all the evidence pointed the wrong direction, no physical evidence pointed to Kevin. The lone eyewitness says, "Oh God, shit, I made a mistake." So there's nothing left to convict him on. But there's another piece of evidence that I just discovered one night while looking at photos and still trying to better get a grip on this case. And I guess I'll say I have some knowledge of black hair. White girl has a little bit of knowledge of black hair. I have a daughter that, that I adopted, and she is African American, and I had to learn, shouldn't say had to, I wanted, to learn how to care for her hair. And so I did. And I learned, I didn't do it well, but I did my best, And so I learned about black hair, and it's became really important to this case because to me, if you know anything at all about black hair, or you're willing to open your mind and look at the possibility of, black people's hair is different than white people's hair, and you would see that Kevin is actually innocent based on hair. It was an impossibility. So Kevin, the murders happen around 8-ish, 8 to 9 p.m. And then Kevin is arrested about 6 a.m. So that's our period of time that we're working with. When Kevin gets arrested, his hair is cornrowed. But Cynthia Douglas is very clear. The man wielding the shotgun, his hair was natural. And she's not a white girl. She's a black girl. She understands black hair. She knows what she's saying when she says a natural. She knows that his hair was not braided. Right. So it would have required. So I presented, white girl here presents to her white judge to the gasp of everybody in the courtroom, like, oh shit, where is this going? Like, Baker, quit doing, don't do it, Baker. I was like, I'm doing it. I put up charts of black hair of how, it looks after it's been braided for, a few hours and a few days and weeks. And Kevin's hair, the cornrows were all, like kind of coming apart a bit. Right. They were worn. So he clearly did not commit a murder at 8 a.m., go home, get his hair braided, maybe take a couple hours of sleep, and then get arrested at 6 a.m. It's an impossibility. And I think back to that lone African-American juror. Hair was talked about. That little discrepancy on hair was talked about. Now, it wasn't, I really used it as a white person to try and educate other white people about black hair. You can't do that to black hair. It doesn't become, it doesn't become that undefined in that short a period of time. So I was just really trying hard to educate my judge about that. And I think he looked at me like, girl, you're crazy. Sit down. I don't know what you're talking about.
But it must have helped.
I don't know if it helped or not, but I'm just telling you, I knew Kevin was innocent before I discovered the hair. But when I saw the hair, I was like, that's an impossibility. That's an impossibility. And a black juror would not convict on that. Black, that's why, you don't want to have an all white jury, right. Because think about that. If we could go back in time, and I'm sure that black female was really defamed. I'm sure, can you imagine how hard a job that was for her? But had we stopped right there, she could have saved us from a 44-year mistake. She could have saved us. She tried to save us from a 44-year mistake, but we didn't want to listen to her. So I'm just saying, it's, being woke ain't bad. It's not a bad thing. It's, I don't know what it is. It's like, I read books, I'm not the most intelligent person in the world, but I really do try to keep learning and understanding. And before my daughter came along, I didn't know anything about black hair. Truly nothing. It says a lot about my parenting. I get it, like why the state of Missouri thought I'd be a good recipient of a black kid. I don't know. But when she came into my care, I knew I gotta lean into this. I gotta do everything I can to be the best mom I can be to her. And I don't know. I don't know. it bothers me that we're in this sort of we can call it woke, but anti-education mode. We're in an
Yeah.
anti-learning mode and anti
Empathy mode.
empathy
Expertise.
mode.
It's the death of expertise. That we can't even admit that people or medical professionals know something about vaccines. We're in a crazy
Yeah.
time right now.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
frustrating. How frustrating.
Okay, can I
Yeah.
ask one question? Because this has been a through line of this podcast for numerous, and I do mean numerous episodes. You had talked about that you were able to get the shotgun out of evidence and run fingerprints on him. Gene, we have had numerous cases. Alex's case just last month. The gentleman that was thought to be he was never convicted of the Tylenol killer, but he murdered, most likely murdered. Well, he's passed away, so he can't sue me. He most likely murdered a individual here in Kansas City before he went to Chicago and all that happened. They lost all that evidence. Obviously, the Leon Jordan case was
Yeah.
so awful. We don't have time to get into that. Listen to that episode.
I know a little bit about that one.
Right.
Yeah.
So, how did you feel like incredibly fortunate that actually was still there and had been tagged?
100% fortunate.
Because
100% fortunate. Now, look, there was a fourth person that hadn't been captured. And I think that helped as well. It helps sort of the why we need to keep this evidence is because there's one person that even, no one has been able to identify. We know there were four people that went into Larry Ingram's home that night, and we never were able to identify that fourth person. I think I met with him as well in prison, by the way.
Wow.
I think we know who he is as well, but I won't name him as well. But, I think that's why they kept it. I think that's why it all existed so many years later.
So has that been cleaned up? I know you don't longer work for the county, but is it better now? Because obviously all the cases that we have done, numerous cases where evidence has either been lost or
Right.
in Leon Jordan's case, they resold it
Yeah,
and then put it in a
right.
police car. I mean, it's insane.
I know.
And Alex probably has counted all the size of mine as going on. Are they doing at least a better job with that?
Well, I don't think I can say for sure about that, but like the evidence room had a major fire and then flood.
Oh,
I
wow.
mean, that happened. And we lost a lot of evidence through that. Our evidence was, um, it was just injured from, if not the fire, from the water damage later. Um, things happen. You know,
Sure.
physical evidence is hard to keep, especially that many years later. So I do think Kansas City does a pretty good job, comparative to smaller organizations on keeping that material. I always thought Lee Summit, did a really good job. I won't name those that I think do a really crappy job, but how well your police department is run, it does impact issues like this, how well they can keep and maintain evidence over time.
Hmm.
Well, I could talk. I know we say this every time we've had you on, second time, but we could talk to you all day. But I know you have a life and probably much more.
You do have a
fun
life.
things You have things to talk about more than us. But as always, you have an open invitation to come back. I feel that this case was so important. I know it got a lot of attention at the time, but
Yeah.
Kevin Strickland's life has just really started in the last 2 years. I mean, I know you
It
just
sure
saw
has.
him. How was he when you last saw him?
Kevin is really good. His
Hmm.
life has not been easy. He's had a whole host of health issues after exiting prison because you get really awful medical care in prison. But one of those times I went to visit Kevin, he's like, Gene, you can sit right there in that chair. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna sit here. And he's like, the chair ain't very comfortable, Gene. And I'm like, well, why don't you have very comfortable chairs? He's like, because I don't want people to stay very long. This is what I love Kevin. I love him because he is funny.
Yeah.
He's optimistic. And then you cannot have served that many years without being real street smart.
Right.
This dude, because he went in as such a young man.
Yeah.
He's a very small person in stature as well. So prison for him, was hard. it was a really hard time. He really suffered. I don't want to, go into personal stories for Kevin, but he suffered. He suffered. And, now as a friend of my family, he's a friend not just of mine, but of my husband's, he lost his whole tribe. That many years in prison, you just lose everybody. They move on with their lives and their families. And so, we have kept him in hours because, one, he's funny. I think he's very funny. He's very interesting. But he's also, there's a whole tragedy there. And there's, you can't get time back.
You can't get time back. And God bless you, Gene. God bless you for what you did and because I don't care what anybody says, you made enemies by just trying to get the truth out there. And you are
I'd fight that fight all over again.
I know you would.
Sign me up.
It's like, in the encyclopedia, there better be like a picture of you when it comes to faithful public servant, because that's who you were. And I think as a citizen, you still are. And I'm just honored to know you. So I appreciate you being
you guys are the best.
See, we're not so bad.
Excuse to have a whiskey with you guys.
There you go.
Going to Redacted City.
Well,
I mean, it's fun.
I felt that was apropos this month to do that.
Well played, Jamie. Well played.
Thank you. So that'll do that. Like I said, you're back anytime. This has been, it needed to be serious, and it's very serious. So we can be serious when we need to be. I did want to say a few things real quick before we go. We will be appearing at True Crime Genre Con on April 11th at the Woodneath Library Center and Auditorium here in Kansas City. Again, April 11th. When we get more information, we will share that with you. But Alex and I are going to be on the stage, and we are going to be recording live in front of an audience our April episode. They're going to go ahead and make a killer mocktail for us, which I thought was cute. And then lastly, we do have a event that is not finalized, but we are going to be at the J. Rieger and Company, a private event or a public event at J. Rieger, where we're going to do another episode. So we're busy. We're busy, Alex.
We fooled people. I don't know how we did it, but we did. Hey, if I can get away with it at Woodneath, folks, you want to get an autographed copy of one of my mystery thriller novels that are totally unrealistic. If Jean ever read them, she'd be like, "Oh my God, how did you really?"
Send one to Jean. I want to hear what she thinks.
I love it.
No, there's too much dirty stuff.
Now.
Jean, you probably don't like dirty stuff, so I won't say that.
I read all things. I read all things.
Oh, do you? Okay. All right. Very good. All right. Well, Jamie, I wanted to thank you, our social director, for getting us these gigs. This is good, but word's traveling. And friends, don't forget, we have our own subscriber on Substack deal. If you want to support the efforts of this show, help us pay our bar bill because we're getting really behind. But don't worry about that so much. But if you can do it, great. There'll be links in the show notes.
All right. So until next time, thanks everybody, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, y'all.
It's always amazing to see how quickly your child grows, and I'm not just talking about their height. From those early babbles to full-on storytelling, getting to watch how their ideas, creativity, and confidence develop over the years is honestly pretty incredible. Sometimes they surprise you with what they come up with, and Lego bricks can be right there with them through all of those stages. It's not just a toy, it's a full creative building journey that keeps evolving as they do. Lego Sets Play starts as early as 1.5 with Lego Duplo, the bigger bricks designed for little hands that are just starting to explore and build. Then around age 4, kids transition to the smaller Lego bricks, and suddenly you're watching real structures take shape, real ideas form, and their imagination really take off. They begin with simple stacking, but over time they grow into full-on creators, building worlds, stories, and things you never would have expected. That's the kind of magic of Lego bricks. You're not buying a phase, you're starting a journey. Learn more and start building today with Lego bricks.